The morning sun painted golden streaks across Windsor Castle's ancient stones as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood before her dressing room mirror. Today was different from her usual royal engagements. The annual Windsor Heritage Gala was the most prestigious event of the season, bringing together dignitaries, artists, and philanthropists from around the world. Her lady-in-waiting, Sarah, carefully arranged the delicate jewelry boxes on the mahogany table. Among them sat a particular treasure that had captured Catherine's attention for weeks, the Cambridge lover's knot tiara. This wasn't just any piece of royal jewelry. It carried the weight of history and the love of generations. The tiara had originally belonged to Queen Mary, who received it as a wedding gift in 1893. Its intricate design featured 19 Baroque pearls suspended from diamond arches, each one catching light like captured starlight. Princess Diana had worn this very piece on numerous occasions, making it even more meaningful for Catherine. As Catherine lifted the tiara from its velvet cushion, she felt the connection to the women who had worn it before her. The weight was substantial, not just physically but emotionally. She thought of Diana's grace, Queen Mary's dignity, and her own responsibility to honor their legacy while creating her own. The preparation for such an event began hours before guests would arrive. Catherine's stylist, Emma, had chosen an elegant navy blue gown by one of her favorite British designers. The dress featured subtle beadwork that would complement the tiara's sparkle without competing for attention. Every detail was carefully considered, from the length of her gloves to the shade of her lipstick. Prince William entered the room just as Catherine was having her hair styled into an elaborate updo. The hairstylist worked with expert precision, ensuring each strand would support the tiara's weight while maintaining an effortless appearance. William smiled as he watched his wife transform into the picture of royal elegance. "You look absolutely stunning," he said, adjusting his own formal attire. William understood the significance of tonight's event. The gala would raise funds for various charities close to their hearts, including organizations supporting mental health, early childhood development, and environmental conservation. Catherine's makeup artist applied the final touches, a subtle shimmer on her eyelids that would catch the ballroom's chandeliers, and a classic red lip that had become her signature look for formal events. Every element worked together to create a look that was both timeless and contemporary. As the afternoon progressed, the castle buzzed with activity. Florists arranged towering displays of white roses and peonies throughout the ballroom. The catering staff prepared exquisite dishes featuring ingredients from the castle's own gardens. Security personnel conducted their final sweeps, ensuring every detail was perfect for the evening's distinguished guests. Catherine took a moment to review her notes for the evening. She would be giving a speech about the importance of arts education in schools, a cause she had championed for years. Her words would reach not only the guests present, but millions watching around the world. The responsibility felt heavy, but she had learned to channel that pressure into purpose. The tiara sat waiting on its cushion, catching the late afternoon light streaming through the tall windows. Catherine knew that once she placed it on her head, she would be transformed from simply Catherine into the Princess of Wales in the eyes of the world. It was a transformation she had grown comfortable with over the years, but one that never lost its significance. Sarah helped Catherine into her gown, carefully fastening each button and ensuring the fabric fell perfectly. The dress hugged her figure elegantly, the navy blue complementing her complexion and making her eyes appear even more vibrant. The subtle train added drama without being ostentatious. As evening approached, the first guests began arriving at the castle gates. Photographers lined the entrance, their cameras ready to capture every moment of elegance and grandeur. The red carpet had been rolled out, lined with carefully maintained topiaries and twinkling lights that would create magical photographs. Catherine looked out the window at the gathering crowd below. She could see familiar faces among the guests, fellow royals, celebrities who supported their charitable causes, and dedicated philanthropists who made events like this possible. Each person had their own story, their own reason for being there, and Catherine felt honored to bring them all together for such important causes. The moment had almost arrived. In just minutes, she would place the tiara on her head and descend the grand staircase to greet their guests. But, for now, she stood quietly in her room, taking deep breaths and centering herself for the evening ahead. The weight of history, responsibility, and opportunity all converged in this single moment of preparation. William reached for her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. Together, they would face whatever the evening brought, carrying forward the traditions of the past while creating new memories for the future. The tiara waited, ready to crown another chapter in the ongoing story of the British royal family. The moment of transformation had arrived. Catherine stood before the full-length mirror as Emma, her trusted hairstylist, made the final adjustments to her updo. Each pin was strategically placed to create the perfect foundation for the Cambridge lovers, not Tiara. The intricate hairstyle had taken nearly 2 hours to complete, with every strand carefully positioned to complement the tiara's design. Sarah lifted the precious piece from its cushion with white cotton gloves, handling it with the reverence it deserved. The diamonds caught the light from every angle, creating tiny rainbows that danced across the room's walls. Catherine closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of tradition as the tiara was gently placed upon her head. The transformation was immediate and breathtaking. The tiara seemed to complete Catherine's look, elevating her from beautiful to truly regal. The 19 Baroque pearls swayed gently as she moved, each one perfectly positioned to catch and reflect light. The diamond arches created an elegant frame around her face, enhancing her natural beauty without overwhelming her features. William stepped closer, his eyes reflecting admiration and pride. After all these years of marriage, he still found himself amazed by Catherine's ability to embody grace under pressure. Tonight, she would be photographed by hundreds of cameras and observed by thousands of guests, yet she maintained her composure with apparent effortlessness. The Queen would be proud, William whispered, referring to his beloved grandmother who had passed away 2 years earlier. Queen Elizabeth II had worn this very tiara on numerous occasions and had always spoken of its significance in connecting generations of royal women. Catherine nodded, feeling the truth of his words deep in her heart. The couple made their way through the castle's corridors, their footsteps echoing softly on the ancient stone floors. Portraits of past monarchs watched from gilded frames, their own stories of duty and service serving as silent inspiration. Catherine's gown rustled softly with each step, the sound mixing with the distant murmur of gathering guests. As they approached the grand staircase, Catherine could hear the orchestra playing classical pieces in the ballroom below. The string quartet's music floated upward, creating an atmosphere of elegance and anticipation. She paused at the top of the stairs, taking one last moment to center herself before making her grand entrance. The ballroom was a vision of opulence and taste. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the assembled guests, their light reflecting off jewelry, metals, and the polished marble floors. Round tables draped in cream-colored linens were adorned with centerpieces of white roses and candles, creating intimate conversation areas within the grand space. The guest list represented a carefully curated mix of society's most influential figures. Diplomats from various countries mingled with renowned artists and writers. Business leaders who had made significant charitable contributions chatted with activists working on the front lines of important causes. Each person had been invited not just for their status, but for their commitment to making a positive difference in the world. Catherine descended the staircase slowly, her hand resting lightly on William's arm. With each step, conversations gradually quieted as guests turned to admire her entrance. The photographer's flashes created a constellation of light, but Catherine had learned long ago to look beyond the cameras to the people they represented. At the bottom of the staircase, the Lord Chamberlain announced their arrival. Their Royal Highnesses, the Prince and Princess of Wales. The formal words echoed through the ballroom, and guests turned fully to offer their respects. Catherine smiled warmly, her tiara catching the chandelier light and creating an almost ethereal glow around her face. The receiving line began immediately. Catherine and William positioned themselves near the entrance to the ballroom, ready to greet each guest personally. This tradition, while time-consuming, was something Catherine valued deeply. It allowed her to connect with people on a human level, even in such formal circumstances. The first to approach was the ambassador from France, accompanied by his wife. Catherine greeted them in fluent French, a skill she had perfected over years of royal duties. The ambassador's wife complimented the tiara, mentioning that her grandmother had seen Princess Diana wear it at a state dinner decades earlier. These connections across time and generations always moved Catherine deeply. Next came a group of young artists whose work would be featured in an upcoming exhibition supported by the Royal Foundation. Catherine spent several minutes with them, asking detailed questions about their creative processes and the challenges facing emerging artists. Her genuine interest was evident in her questions and attentive listening. A renowned conductor approached with his wife, both longtime supporters of music education programs. Catherine had visited several schools where their funded programs operated, and she enthusiastically discussed the positive changes she had witnessed. The tiara seemed to amplify her natural charisma, helping her command attention while remaining approachable. As the receiving line continued, Catherine noticed how the tiara affected not just how others saw her, but how she carried herself. There was something about wearing such a significant piece of royal history that strengthened her sense of purpose and responsibility. She stood a little taller, spoke a little more deliberately, and found herself naturally embodying the dignity the moment required. A young girl, daughter of one of the philanthropists, approached shyly with her parents. Catherine immediately crouched down to the child's level, careful not to disturb her tiara, and asked about the drawings she was clutching. The little girl had made pictures of princesses wearing crowns, inspired by knowing she would meet Catherine tonight. The innocent interaction reminded Catherine why representation mattered, especially to young girls who needed to see strong, capable women in positions of leadership. The orchestra transitioned to a waltz as the formal receiving concluded. William offered Catherine his hand, and together they moved toward the ballroom's center where the first dance would take place. This tradition would officially open the evening's festivities and signal to guests that dinner would soon be served. As they took their positions for the dance, Catherine felt the full weight of the moment. Hundreds of eyes watched their every movement. Cameras captured each graceful step, and the tiara's pearls swayed gently with the rhythm of the music. Yet in William's arms, surrounded by beautiful music and meaningful company, she felt completely at peace. The waltz began with the gentle sweep of violins, and Catherine found herself moving in perfect harmony with William across the polished marble floor. Years of practice had made their dance partnership effortless, each step flowing naturally into the next. The tiara remained perfectly positioned despite their movement, a testament to Emma's expert styling and the centuries of craftsmanship that had gone into its creation. Around them, guests formed a respectful circle, some recording the magical moment on their phones while others simply watched in admiration. The scene was reminiscent of fairy tales, but Catherine knew this was real life with real purpose. Every element of tonight's gala served the greater goal of raising funds and awareness for causes close to their hearts. As the dance concluded, applause filled the ballroom. Catherine and William bowed gracefully before making their way to the head table. The seating arrangement had been planned months in advance, ensuring that each guest would have meaningful conversations with their table mates while facilitating important connections for future charitable collaborations. Catherine found herself seated between Dr. Margaret Shun, a pioneering researcher in early childhood development, and James Morrison, a successful tech entrepreneur who had recently established a foundation focused on environmental conservation. Both were passionate advocates whose work aligned perfectly with Catherine's own interests and initiatives. Dr. Chun immediately engaged Catherine in conversation about her recent visit to a nursery school in Manchester, where Catherine had observed innovative teaching methods designed to support children's emotional development. The tiara caught the candlelight as Catherine leaned forward, genuinely interested in learning more about the scientific research behind these educational approaches. "Your Royal Highness," Dr. Chen said, "the program you visited is showing remarkable results. Children who participate show measurably better emotional regulation and social skills by age 5. With proper funding, we could implement this model in schools across the country." Catherine's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. This was exactly the kind of evidence-based approach she believed in. What would it take to expand the program? She asked, her mind already working through the possibilities. The Royal Foundation had resources, but, more importantly, it had the platform to bring attention to proven solutions. Meanwhile, James Morrison waited patiently for his opportunity to discuss his environmental initiatives. He had developed technology that could significantly reduce plastic waste and packaging, but needed support in bringing it to market affordably. When Catherine turned her attention to him, she was equally engaged and informed. "The challenge isn't just innovation," Morrison explained. "It's making sustainable solutions accessible to everyone, not just luxury brands." Catherine nodded thoughtfully. She had seen this problem repeatedly in her charitable work, great solutions that remained out of reach for those who needed them most. The conversation was interrupted by the gentle chiming of crystal glasses. William stood to offer the evening's first toast, and the ballroom gradually quieted. Catherine looked up at her husband with pride as he spoke about the importance of coming together to support meaningful causes. His words were heartfelt and personal, reflecting their shared commitment to service. Tonight, we gather not just to celebrate, but to invest in our future, William said, his voice carrying clearly throughout the room. The organizations we support tonight are changing lives every day, often in ways that never make headlines but create lasting impact in communities around the world. Catherine felt a surge of emotion as William mentioned their children and the world they hoped to leave for them. The tiara seemed to connect her to all the royal women who had faced similar moments of purpose and responsibility. She thought of Queen Elizabeth's lifetime of service, Diana's compassion for those in need, and her own role in continuing that legacy. As William concluded his remarks, Catherine rose gracefully to add her own thoughts. She hadn't planned to speak at this moment, but something about the atmosphere and the conversations she'd been having inspired her to share her reflections. When I put on this tiara tonight, she began, her voice clear and confident, I was reminded that we are all connected across time by our shared humanity and our desire to make life better for others. The women who wore this piece before me faced different challenges, but the same fundamental calling to serve. She paused, looking around the room at faces that reflected attention and respect. Each of you here tonight represents that same calling. You're not here because you have to be, but because you choose to be part of something larger than yourself. That choice, multiplied across this room and beyond, has the power to change the world. The applause that followed was warm and sustained. Catherine had struck exactly the right note. Personal enough to be moving, universal enough to include everyone present, and inspiring enough to energize the room for the important work ahead. Dinner service began as conversations resumed with renewed energy. Catherine noticed how the tiara seemed to facilitate interactions. People approached her with a certain reverence, yes, but also with genuine enthusiasm for the causes being discussed. The formality of the setting created space for serious conversations about serious topics. The menu had been carefully planned to showcase British ingredients and culinary traditions while accommodating various dietary requirements. Each course was paired with wines from English vineyards, supporting local agriculture while providing an exceptional dining experience. Catherine had tasted and approved every element weeks earlier, ensuring that the food would be as memorable as the cause. Between courses, Catherine moved around the room, stopping at different tables to continue conversations and meet guests she hadn't yet spoken with. The tiara's weight had become comfortable now, feeling natural and right. She found herself standing taller, speaking with increased confidence, and naturally commanding attention when she entered conversations. At one table, she joined a discussion between several educators about implementing arts programs in underserved schools. The passionate debate reminded her of her own school days and the teachers who had made lasting impacts on her life. She shared a story about a recent school visit where she had witnessed children's transformation through exposure to painting and music. Another table was focused on mental health initiatives, a cause that had become increasingly important to both Catherine and William. She listened intently as mental health professionals shared statistics about youth anxiety and depression, while also highlighting successful intervention programs. The conversation was sobering but ultimately hopeful, focused on solutions rather than just problems. As the evening progressed, Catherine realized that the tiara had become more than just a beautiful accessory. It was a symbol of continuity, connecting past and present while pointing toward the future. Every conversation, every connection made tonight would ripple outward to create positive change in ways that might not be immediately visible, but would certainly be meaningful. The dessert course arrived as the orchestra shifted to more contemporary pieces, signaling that the formal portion of the evening was drawing to a close. But Catherine knew that the real work was just beginning. Tonight's conversations would lead to follow-up meetings, new partnerships, and expanded programs that would impact thousands of lives. As coffee and petit fours were served, the atmosphere in the ballroom shifted subtly from formal dinner conversation to more relaxed networking. Catherine moved gracefully between groups, the Cambridge lover's knot tiara catching the light with each turn of her head. She had mastered the art of meaningful mingling, spending just enough time with each person to make them feel valued while ensuring she could connect with as many guests as possible. Near the ballroom's French doors, which opened onto the castle's illuminated gardens, Catherine encountered Lady Margaret Thornton, a renowned art historian who had recently completed a book about royal jewelry. The elderly woman's eyes immediately focused on the tiara with professional appreciation. Your Royal Highness, what a privilege to see the Cambridge lovers knot worn so beautifully, Lady Margaret said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. I've studied photographs of this piece for decades, but seeing it in person reveals details that never show in pictures. Catherine was delighted to meet someone who truly understood the tiara's significance. Please, tell me what you notice, she encouraged, always eager to learn more about the pieces she wore and their place in history. The craftsmanship is extraordinary, Lady Margaret explained, gesturing carefully toward the tiara without touching it. Each pearl is perfectly matched, and the diamond settings are so precise that they've maintained their sparkle for over a century. But what strikes me most is how naturally you wear it. Some pieces of royal jewelry can overwhelm their wearers, but this suits you perfectly. Their conversation was joined by Dr. Elizabeth Hartley, the director of the National Gallery, who had been listening with interest. Lady Margaret, you should tell Her Royal Highness about your research into the tiara's influence on contemporary jewelry design. As Lady Margaret launched into a fascinating discussion about how historical royal pieces continued to inspire modern designers, Catherine found herself genuinely absorbed in learning about the broader cultural impact of royal traditions. These moments of intellectual stimulation were among her favorite aspects of royal engagements. The conversation was gently interrupted by Catherine's private secretary, who discreetly indicated that it was time for the evening's planned presentation. Catherine excused herself gracefully and made her way toward the small stage that had been set up at one end of the ballroom. The lights dimmed slightly as William joined her, and the guests naturally gathered closer to hear their remarks. Catherine had spent hours preparing her speech, working with her team to strike the right balance between inspiration and information, gratitude and call to action. Friends, supporters, and fellow advocates, Catherine began, her voice carrying clearly throughout the room. Tonight has been a beautiful reminder of what we can accomplish when we come together with shared purpose. But our work extends far beyond this evening's celebration. She spoke about the specific programs that would benefit from tonight's fundraising, sharing stories from her recent visits to project sites. Her words painted vivid pictures of children discovering their artistic talents, families receiving mental health support, and communities implementing environmental solutions. I had the privilege last month of visiting a school in Birmingham where children who had never held a paintbrush were creating masterpieces that brought tears to my eyes, Catherine shared, her emotion evident, but controlled. One little girl told me that painting helped her feel calm when things at home were difficult. That's the power of the arts, not just to entertain, but to heal, to inspire, and to transform. The audience listened intently as Catherine continued to weave together personal anecdotes and broader statistics, making the case for continued support of their chosen charities. The tiara seemed to amplify her natural charisma, helping her command attention while maintaining her characteristic warmth and authenticity. When she spoke about environmental initiatives, her passion was evident. We have a responsibility to leave the world better than we found it, she said, looking out over the crowd of influential individuals who had the power to make significant change. Tonight's support will fund research into sustainable technologies that could revolutionize how we think about conservation. William stepped forward to announce the evening's fundraising total, a number that exceeded their most optimistic projections. The room erupted in applause, but Catherine felt the weight of responsibility even as she celebrated the achievement. These funds represented trust that she and William would ensure they made the maximum possible impact. As the formal program concluded, the orchestra resumed playing, and guests began to spread throughout the ballroom and adjoining reception rooms. Catherine noticed several small groups forming around specific topics, evidence that tonight's conversations would continue and potentially lead to new collaborations. She was approached by Maria Gonzalez, a young woman whose nonprofit organization worked with refugee children. Maria had received an invitation through one of the partner charities and seemed somewhat overwhelmed by the grandeur of her surroundings. Your Royal Highness, Maria began hesitantly. I'm not sure I belong here among all these important people. Catherine immediately put the young woman at ease. Maria, you absolutely belong here. The work you're doing with refugee children is exactly why we're all here tonight. Tell me about your programs. As Maria began to describe her organization's work teaching art therapy to children who had experienced trauma, Catherine saw the passion and dedication that reminded her why these events mattered. It wasn't about the glamour or the formal traditions. It was about connecting resources with people who were making a real difference. Their conversation attracted the attention of several potential donors who had been looking for worthy causes to support. Catherine watched with satisfaction as meaningful connections formed organically, exactly as she had hoped they would. The evening was approaching its planned conclusion, but Catherine could see that many guests were reluctant to leave. The combination of excellent company, meaningful purpose, and beautiful surroundings had created an atmosphere that people wanted to extend. She made a mental note to suggest longer events in the future, as the extended time clearly facilitated deeper connections. As she prepared to begin the formal farewell process, Catherine caught sight of herself in one of the ballroom's gilt mirrors. The tiara had remained perfectly positioned throughout the evening, its diamonds still sparkling as brilliantly as when she had first put it on hours earlier. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the evening's success, and for the opportunity to wear such a meaningful piece of history in service of causes she truly believed in. The Cambridge Lover's Knot tiara had once again fulfilled its purpose, not just as a beautiful ornament, but as a symbol of continuity, responsibility, and service. Tonight, it had helped Catherine embody the best traditions of royal duty while supporting the important work of building a better future for all. The evening's final hour unfolded with the graceful rhythm of a well-orchestrated conclusion. Catherine and William positioned themselves near the ballroom's main entrance, ready to bid farewell to each guest personally. This tradition, while exhausting after such a long evening, was something Catherine insisted upon. It provided one last opportunity to reinforce connections and express genuine gratitude for support. The farewell process became almost as meaningful as the initial reception. Guests approached with visible reluctance to leave, many expressing how inspired they felt by the evening's conversations and presentations. Catherine noticed that people weren't just being polite. There was genuine energy and commitment in their voices as they spoke about future collaborations and continued support. Dr. Margaret Chen was among the first to approach for farewells. "Your Royal Highness, tonight has given me so much hope for expanding our early childhood programs. I'll be following up with your team about the partnerships we discussed." Catherine smiled warmly, carefully embracing the researcher without disturbing her tiara. "Please do, Dr. Chen. I meant every word about wanting to support evidence-based approaches to child development. We'll make sure your programs get the attention they deserve." James Morrison, the environmental entrepreneur, shook hands with both Catherine and William. "The connections I've made tonight could change everything for our sustainability initiatives," he said with evident excitement. "Thank you for creating a space where real solutions can find the support they need." As the evening progressed, Catherine began to feel the physical weight of the tiara more noticeably. The piece, while expertly crafted, was substantial, and after 6 hours of wear, her neck muscles were beginning to remind her of its presence. Yet she maintained her poise perfectly, never allowing her discomfort to show or interfere with her interactions. Lady Margaret Thornton approached with a small gift, a leather-bound first edition book about the history of royal jewelry. "For your personal library," she said with a knowing smile. "I thought you might enjoy reading about some of the other magnificent pieces in the royal collection." Catherine accepted the gift graciously, genuinely touched by the thoughtful gesture. "This is incredibly generous, Lady Margaret. I'll treasure it, and I'm sure it will help me appreciate even more deeply the pieces I have the privilege to wear." The young refugee advocate, Maria Gonzalez, was among the last to leave. She approached Catherine with tears in her eyes. "Tonight changed my life," she said simply. "The connections you helped me make, the support people pledged, it means we can help so many more children." Catherine felt her own emotions stirring as she responded. "Maria, you're the one changing lives every day. Tonight just helped more people recognize the importance of your work. Keep in touch with us. We want to follow your progress." As the final guests departed into the crisp night air, their cars forming a slow procession down the castle's tree-lined drive, Catherine and William found themselves alone in the ballroom for the first time since afternoon preparations had begun. The space looked different now, slightly disheveled from the evening's activities, but somehow more alive, as if it held the energy of all the meaningful conversations that had taken place. The catering staff moved efficiently to clear tables and restore the room, but they worked quietly, respecting the contemplative mood that had settled over the royal couple. Catherine walked slowly around the ballroom's perimeter, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor as she processed the evening's events. "I think we can call tonight a success," William said, joining her near the windows that looked out onto the moonlit gardens. The formal gardens were illuminated by subtle landscape lighting, creating a peaceful contrast to the evening's intensity. Catherine nodded, then carefully reached up to touch the tiara. I keep forgetting it's there, but then I catch sight of it in a reflection and remember what it represents. Tonight felt different somehow, more purposeful, more connected to something larger than ourselves. Together, they made their way back to their private apartments, followed discreetly by security personnel and Catherine's lady-in-waiting. The castle's corridors felt peaceful after the evening's energy, and Catherine found herself looking forward to the quiet ritual of removing her formal attire and processing everything that had happened. In her dressing room, Sarah waited to assist with the careful removal of the tiara and gown. The process was as deliberate as the morning's preparation had been. Each piece of jewelry was cleaned and returned to its designated case, each element of her outfit handled with appropriate care. As the tiara was lifted from Catherine's head for the final time that evening, she felt a subtle shift in her posture and presence. The transformation back to simply Catherine, rather than the Princess of Wales in formal regalia, was always a moment of transition. She rubbed her neck gently, working out the stiffness that had developed from carrying the tiara's weight. "How did it feel tonight, ma'am?" Sarah asked as she carefully placed the tiara back in its special case. The question was personal rather than professional, reflecting the close relationship Catherine had developed with her staff over the years. "It felt right," Catherine answered thoughtfully. "Heavy in all the best ways. Like carrying forward something important while making it my own." She paused, considering her words. "I think Diana would have approved of tonight's purpose, and I hope Queen Elizabeth would have been proud of how we honored the tradition while focusing on the future." Later, as Catherine and William prepared for bed, they reflected on the evening's highlights and potential impacts. The fundraising total had exceeded expectations, but, more importantly, they had witnessed the formation of new partnerships and renewed commitments to ongoing work. "Did you see Maria's face when she was talking to those potential donors?" Catherine asked, removing her earrings and placing them in their designated spots. "That young woman is going to change so many lives, and tonight gave her the platform she needed." William nodded, already making mental notes about follow-up actions for their staff. The environmental conversations were incredibly promising too. "I think we're going to see some real innovations come out of tonight's connections." As Catherine completed her evening routine, she found herself thinking about the cyclical nature of royal duty. Tomorrow would bring new responsibilities and opportunities, but tonight had demonstrated the enduring power of bringing people together around shared values and common purpose. The Cambridge Lover's Knot tiara now rested securely in its case, ready for its next important occasion. But its impact from this evening would continue rippling outward through the connections made, the funds raised, and the renewed commitments to service that had been inspired under its sparkling presence. Catherine fell asleep thinking about the children who would benefit from tonight's arts education funding, the families who would receive mental health support, and the communities that would implement new environmental solutions. The tiara had done more than make her look elegant. It had helped her fulfill her deepest sense of purpose as a member of the royal family and as a human being committed to making the world a better place. In the quiet darkness of Windsor Castle, surrounded by centuries of history and tradition, Catherine slept peacefully, knowing that she had honored both the past and the future in equal measure. The evening had been a perfect example of how royal traditions could serve contemporary purposes, creating lasting positive change while maintaining the dignity and grace that made such occasions truly special.